Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here again in a new session today in one very important session because, when you are hosting your own marketing stack, you have to be aware if it's working or not. It's like when we are hosting our own WordPress, our own, Joomla, our own Mautic, you have to be, constantly checking if it's all the servers are working well, if it's our platform is sending email, and all this tech part. It's really important because we become owner of the solution. And now we will have a great session with Patrick Jenkner. He's a data and process analyst trainee at Leuchtfeuer. It's a pleasure to have you here today, Patrick.
Hi, thank you so much for the nice introduction. It's great to be
Oh,
here.
nice. Yeah, the stage is all yours.
Awesome, thank you very much. Then I will just share my presentation real quick and then we can get started. So let's just double check. Yeah, you can see that. Great. So yes, my presentation is about automatically testing Mautic with a tool called Codeception. But first things first, I need to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Patrick. You already heard that. I'm 24 years old and I have been working at Leuchtfeuer in Hanover for pretty much exactly a year by now. I am a trainee in data and process analysis, or as we like to say in German, Auszubildender zum Fachinformatiker für Daten- und Prozessanalyse. If you can say that 3 times in a row, then you've mastered German, essentially. As for what I do on a day-to-day basis, I like to think of myself as kind of a techie Mautic integrator. I'm definitely not a developer, but I do like to jump into code and databases every now and then. And yeah, I think techie Mautic integrator describes my job pretty well. So, what are we going to talk about today? I will tell you about acceptance testing, what it is and why you should properly do it, what Codeception is and how it can help you to achieve that. We will write an actual automated test together, start to finish, to show you that it's not as intimidating as it might sound. And I will talk a bit about further possibilities of automated testing outside of the scope of this 30-minute talk. So, to start off, we need to talk about a bit of testing background because there are different kinds of tests that you can run on your software product, but not all of them are there for the same job. You have probably already heard of unit testing. Unit tests are automated tests that test a very small part of your code on its own. And they are really useful because you can run them automatically and they take very little time. So you can run them again and again and again while developing to make sure that you've not messed up in some obvious way. But they are not complete tests because they only test small part of your code individually. Even if you have written a lot of tests to cover a big part of your software, you can never really be sure that they all work together in the way that you expected. So unit testing can only be a part of your testing setup, I would say. That's where acceptance testing comes in. Acceptance testing tests the whole actual product, not just its components. So for Mautic, that could mean, for example, actually installing a plugin that you're developing and then going into the Mautic backend and actually doing all of the things that you are supposed to do and checking if it's actually working. That's the only way that you can really be sure that your product is working, actually testing the whole product on its own. And if you have been working with Mautic for some time, especially if you've been on GitHub, you probably already know that because at the bottom of every pull request, you see something like this. Down here, we have unit tests that are run automatically every time a pull request against Mautic is made. And only if all of these unit tests actually pass can the pull request be merged. But that's just like the first gatekeeper to make sure that the code is up to some quality. It can never really be enough to just run unit tests. That's why there's also a manual review required. And in the case of Mautic, that means actually installing the plugin or running it on Gitpod, for example, and then actually testing that all of the criteria that have been defined work like they should. Or in the case of Mautic, you even need two reviews from two different people. Because like I said, and it's really important to keep that in mind, actually doing and testing what your, let's say, plugin, for example, is supposed to be doing is the only way to really be sure that it's working. But acceptance testing takes a lot of time because you need to do the whole thing. And if you want to acceptance test your own Mautic instance, for example, you would need to technically do all of the things that Mautic can do, like create a contact, a segment, a campaign, send some mails, and this and that and that. And you cannot do that all the time because then you would not have any hours left in the day. So what do? We automate the whole process so that you can just press a button or two buttons maybe, and then go get yourself a cup of coffee, and once you come back, everything has been tested. That's where Codeception comes in, as you might can imagine. What's Codeception? Codeception is an open source testing framework for PHP. With Codeception, you can test a whole lot of different things. You can use Codeception for unit tests, for example, but you can also test an API or a database or a whole lot of things. What we are interested in today is browser testing, which is like just a small part of Codeception. Browser testing means that some predefined steps or test cases are actually executed in a browser automatically, like actually opening a browser and opening the Mautic backend and actually doing some things. That's important to keep in mind, that when we are talking about acceptance tests today, we are actually talking about really doing things in like the Mautic backend, for example. Since Codeception is a framework for PHP, skills in coding and especially PHP are pretty helpful, as you can imagine probably, but they are not required because Codeception is written in a way that it's really easy to write tests without knowing how to code, at least not really knowing how to code. But I will show you that later. So, to give you a better idea about what Codeception can do, I am going to show you one test in action. What I've written here is a little test that will try to create a contact in Mautic. Just go through your head and imagine all of the steps that you need to do to create a contact in Mautic. And maybe think about how long it would probably take you to do again and again and again. And then this is all going to be a bit fast, but that's kind of the point. But don't worry, we will go about watch this video again at a later stage so that you can really know what's going on. This is just a first little teaser, let's say, to see what Codeception can do. So let me just play that real quick. And I am just executing a single command, nothing more. And a browser opens up all on its own. I'm not doing anything here. We log into Mautic. Need to wait a bit because it's a local Mautic instance. Open the contacts, click on new contact, fill out the fields much faster than I could. And then, after everything is done, everything seems to have worked from what I can see, and Codeception agrees. We get this little green card down there which says everything worked like it should. We can create contacts. Congratulations. That was really, really fast, faster than I could do it, probably faster than you can, I'm assuming. And that's, like I said, the point of Codeception. You can define a test once and run it again and again and again really, really quickly. But after that little teaser, we need to jump into like how Codeception actually works. You need to write instructions for Codeception to execute on your, let's say, Mautic, for example. The first type of instructions that Codeception can do is actions, which is every time you want to do something. For example, you might want to open a web page. That is usually the first thing you need to do. You write that in a kind of interesting syntax, I think, because this is essentially a sentence. I am on URL, and then you have, for example, mautic.org. You just have some special characters in the middle, like this $, this arrow, and so on and so forth. If you're a developer, you can probably kind of guess why that's there. But if you're not a developer, you don't need to worry about it. You just need to remember, okay, I need to write a $, before the I and then an arrow. And then you just write actual sentences, basically. I could say this to a person and they would understand what I'm saying. If I want to Codeception to click on a button that has login written on it, like I just did in my test, I say, I click login. Like I said, really simple to understand and to read out. I can also fill in a form field. For example, if I want to type the username admin into the username field, I just say, I fill form field, username admin. The other thing Codeception can do is things called assertions, which is checking that something is there or not there, usually. Usually I try to test if something is visible on the page. For example, I can say, hey, after I've logged in, I want to see the dashboard. I want to see the headline dashboard written there. So I just say, I see dashboard. And then Codeception checks, hey, can I see the word dashboard written somewhere? If yes, everything's good. If not, then it will tell me. I can also be a bit more specific. I can say I want to see the word dashboard written as an H1 heading, like the main heading of the page. I don't just want to see dashboard written somewhere. I want it as the main heading of the page. I can also say I want to see a specific kind of element, for example, an input field by just saying I see element. I can also check if I've received a cookie by saying I see cookie. And in this case, I'm checking for some cookie containing a Mautic device ID. I can also check that I don't see something. For example, if I open my Mautic, I don't want to see, I think I broke it. I think we can all agree on that. We don't want to see that anymore. And we can tell Codeception, hey, if that ever appears, please abort because something has gone wrong. So now that we've gotten a bit of background knowledge about how Codeception works with these instructions, assertions, and actions, we are going to watch the same clip as before again, with one small difference. In this terminal here on the right, there will now be written out all of the steps that Codeception is actually doing. So just keep an eye on that and think about what you would do to create a contact. Let me just play that real quick. And we're done again. And now this set of instructions over here kind of reads like a log of what Codeception is doing. I am on URL so-and-so. I fill the field so-and-so. I click on that and that button. Again, Codeception is really easy to understand. You can read those instructions without knowing what Codeception is and kind of guess, okay, there has been like a contact has been created in Mautic because I click on the word contact, I click on the login button, and so on and so forth. Now, another thing to keep in mind or to be aware of is what part of, like what pieces of software you actually need to run Codeception, because Codeception is only a part of the story. We have Codeception, for example, on our local laptop. You could run it on any old laptop. Honestly, it doesn't take a lot of resources. And that is where we are writing the instructions. We have a couple of PHP files, and we just write a list of instructions like I've described before. And then we can execute this test. But Codeception itself cannot actually open a web browser and click on things. That's not what Codeception is doing. The instructions from Codeception need to be sent somewhere where an actual browser is opened and actions are being performed. That is where a tool called Selenium comes in. What Selenium is doing is receiving the instructions from Codeception and then opening an actual browser, for example, a Chrome browser or Firefox or whatever you can imagine, and then actually doing all of these things. Those are happening inside of Selenium. Then, while that is happening, Selenium sends feedback back to Codeception. For example, okay, I have clicked on the login button and everything works. You can go ahead, send me the next instruction. Or also, hey, you wanted me to see the word dashboard, but I don't see the word dashboard anywhere. Something has gone wrong, I think. Then Codeception will receive that feedback and be like, okay, I think we messed up. Let's abort and look at it again. But hopefully, we just see a nice set of instructions that have been executed, and then the wonderful phrase OK in green at the bottom, because that means everything has worked like it should. So it's always about these two things: Codeception, sending instructions to Selenium, Selenium executing those instructions, and then sending feedback back to Codeception, which is usually what we are actually observing. Now, we have gotten through a lot of technical background, at least a brief overview. So let's write our own test from start to finish. Step 0 is installing everything, like so often with technical things. You need PHP, Codeception, and Selenium. I am not going to show you how to install all those things because it really depends on your setup, and we would be here all evening probably. But don't worry, because there are really comprehensive and exhaustive guides on the Codeception.com website. You have quick start guides for just setting the whole thing up with a couple of key presses. You have further instructions for how to set up individual parts in a way that you want. You just need to follow those instructions. It's actually really simple to follow. So we're not going to talk about that, but have no fear, you can do it on your own. Now, step one in writing a test is thinking about what do I want my test to do and how would I, as a person, go about doing that. For this example, I want to write the simplest of tests. I want to log in to my Mautic instance. So let's see how I, as a person, would go about logging into my Mautic. I would start off, obviously, by opening my Mautic page, in this case, a ddev Mautic 510. I will then fill my username in, admin. After that, I will fill in my password. Most of you probably know it's Mautic Rocks because it's a local Mautic instance. And after my password has been filled in, I will click on the login button. Then I will wait for the page to load. And after the loading has been complete, I want to see my dashboard. And that's it. That's the whole process, right? So let's write down all of the steps that we would do as a person. I open my website. I enter my username, admin. I enter my password, Mautic Rocks. I click the login button, and then I see the dashboard. Simple as that. Those instructions are going to remain on the left side of the screen, and we will go through the further steps with them. The next thing to do is getting so-called selectors. Selectors are essentially the things that tell Codeception where exactly we want it to do things. Because I can tell you, as a human, please enter your username, admin, and you will do it no problem. But how is Codeception supposed to know that it's supposed to fill its username in here? Or that it's supposed to fill its password in here? We know that, but we need to tell Codeception, hey, I want you to do it at exactly that point. That is where selectors come in. And you can get selectors for individual elements pretty simply by simply right-clicking on the element in your web page and then going down in this little drop-down menu and clicking Inspect. This will open a kind of confusing-looking interface, but have no fear, you don't need like 99% of it. The only thing you need to worry about is this colorful text right here is the HTML and CSS of the page. And we are interested in the HTML and CSS of our login, our username field. That is what's highlighted in light blue here, because that is what we right-clicked on. And what we want to find out is the ID of this field. The ID of this field is the identifier, which is like its name, essentially. There's also a field called name, that's something different. You could also say the ID is like its address. If you want to send a letter somewhere, you need the exact address of where to send it to. The ID is that thing, essentially. So we are just looking, okay, what's the ID of my username field? Username. Okay, I could have guessed that, honestly. Let's keep that in mind and go to the next thing by simply waiting and then right-clicking on the password field, again going down to inspect. Now we see a different section of the HTML has lit up. It's the section for the password field. The password field has the ID password. Okay, we could have guessed those two things in that instant, but it's not always that easy. So it's easiest to always do those steps, getting the selectors so you know that you are addressing the right fields. So after that, we need to adjust our instructions a bit. We need to tell Codeception to open the web page. Okay, that remains the same. And then entering admin into the field that has the ID username. Pretty much the same as we've said before, but just in a more techie way, I guess you could say. And also enter the string Mautic Rocks into the field with the ID password. Then we can click the login button, and after that, we should see the dashboard. So after all that, let's actually write our own test. Now, this is basically what you would see after you've set up Codeception by following the instructions on Codeception.com. You get like a project with a bunch of folders all set up for you. You don't need to do anything. Just open it in VS Code or PHP Storm or whatever you prefer. And then let's actually walk through the whole process of writing our test. So I have opened a little terminal in my Codeception folder, and first things first, I want to create my test, my empty test essentially. So I need to basically address the Codeception program by typing php vendor bin Codeception or Codecept. You just need to remember that once, and then it's in your blood essentially. Then I want to generate a test, create a new test file. It's called a CEST, C-E-S-T, which means Codeception test. It's just the format Codeception uses. I want to create an acceptance test. Like I said, Codeception can also do other things. We want an acceptance test. And I want to call that test login. Because that, oh, I'm so sorry. Let's do that again. So, something had to go wrong. So, here we are. After I've executed that command, we should be able to see after just 1 second, yes, exactly, a new file has been created called login test. It's the login codeception test.php, and we just need to open it. So let's do just that. And we can see a little PHP file. All of these things are automatically put in there. You don't really need to worry about most of that. Actually, like I said, you don't need to know how to code or how to read PHP in order to use Codeception. All that we need to worry about is these 2 brackets down here. Again, I keep missing the pause button. So let's just do it the old-fashioned way, like that. Between these 2 brackets, all of our instructions, our actions and assertions will be written. But first things first, we want to give our test a better name than try to test. That's just a default placeholder name that Codeception gives every test we create. So let's rename it really quick. Let's call it test login, because that's what we're testing, right? So we've just renamed the test, and then we just need to put all of our assertions and actions between these 2 brackets. So create a new line, and remember the syntax I have shown you before. I want to do something. What do I want to do? I want to test the Mautic login. That is what I want my test to do. I just write that at the beginning so that everyone knows what my test is going to do. Then, next thing, I need to open my URL, my web page. So I am on URL, and then I just type the URL that I had previously opened in my own browser. Let's give that a bit of time so that everyone can keep their eyes on the page, so to say. And after that, the next thing I want to do is entering my username, admin, into the field with the ID username. So I say I fill field. Then I need to say what field I want to fill. In this case, the field with the ID username. So we just write hashtag username. Hashtag means field with the ID. And I want to enter admin. So I put that after the field I want to fill. Then I need to fill my password, Mautic Rocks, into the field with the ID password. So I basically just write a copy of the syntax from above, say I fill field, password, what do I fill it with? Mautic Rocks. And since it's PHP, you need to put a little semicolon after each line. That's just PHP magic, essentially. Next thing I want to do is click on the login button. So this one's pretty easy. I say I click login. That's it. Then I want to wait for a little bit, just because sometimes Mautic takes a bit longer to load than it should, especially if you're running it locally via DDEV. So I wait for 1 second after I've clicked on the login button. And then I want to see the dashboard. So I just say I see, and then dashboard. And that's it. Now we have written our first test together. That was the whole process, right? This video is 3 minutes long, a bit over because I was typing really slow. But it doesn't take any longer than that to write a really simple test. That's the cool thing about Codeception. So, last thing to do, let's watch our test in action. So, I have once again opened my terminal on the desktop. I want to execute the test. So again, I say php vendor bin Codecept. That's just how I address Codeception. I want to run a test. It's in the tests folder, and it's called login_test.php. You can also use your tab key to autocomplete. You don't need to type everything out. And now it should begin after I have pressed enter. I just add minus steps after the command so that we see all of the instructions we've just written out. So browser on the left, terminal on the right, and let's watch. And I didn't even have time to take a drink while that test was running. Like, it's so fast, faster than I could do it. So let's just watch it again. You don't need to see me type the whole thing again. Just bask in our glory and watch the test that we've just written in 3 minutes do its thing again. Now the test will be executed. We will see our protocol, so to say, on the right, our browser on the left. On the right, we see all of the instructions we've just written out. And on the left, we see all of the things we wanted to happen. And that's it. The test has passed. Everything worked like it should. So we see the green little OK that we always want to see at the bottom. And that's the whole process. Let's go through it again so that we can keep it in mind. Analyze the process, do it yourself, write down the steps you're doing, get the selectors by using the inspect menu, write the test itself, actually, and then watch the test in action, not only because it's cool, but also because probably not everything works on your first try, and that's okay. So we need to watch the test do its thing to know when something goes wrong and then fixing it in our code. But what happens if something in a test goes wrong? Because testing is only really efficient or effective, I say, if it catches when things don't go as planned. So what I've done here is I'm going to execute the same test again, but this time against a Mautic that doesn't work because I've deleted a bunch of folders from it. You shouldn't do that unless you want to break your Mautic. So let's see what happens if I want to log into a broken Mautic. I execute the test. I can't even read what's in the browser because Codeception is too fast for me, but I see a lot of red, which is usually not what I want to see, especially this big word here, fail, which means, hey, the test has failed. Let's do a bit of slow-mo and see what actually happened. It should be right over here. Right, if I want to open the web page, I see this little error message. Like I said, I just broke my Mautic. And so Codeception can open the web page, that works, but it can't fill in the field username because there is no username field, right? So after that, it will say, hey, I haven't found the failed username. Something has gone wrong. So Codeception will tell you what failed, when it failed, at what step, and why it failed. Now, this fail protocol, if I want to call it that, is only somewhat effective because in this case, like, okay, it didn't find the username field, but what does that mean? In this case, the problem wasn't that the username field wasn't there, it was that Mautic wasn't there. So this like fail protocol can only get you so far. You still need to do some manual investigating on your own, but it will catch if something goes wrong. It just can't always tell you exactly what goes wrong. So after all that, just one last thing to do. What else can Codeception do that I haven't had the time to talk about today? Codeception has extensive logging and reporting. It creates screenshots, both of the HTML of the page as well as an image screenshot every time a test fails, so that you can see what the page looked like once the test failed. It also, you can run multiple tests at a time. It will try to run each of them and tell you which of those worked, which didn't. You don't have to watch Codeception do its thing. You can really just run it overnight and in the morning watch the whole protocol. Codeception, because it uses can run a lot of different tests, like I said at the beginning, you can combine those with this acceptance testing we've done today and run database tests. You can test if a contact you've created actually goes into the Mautic database. You can also do things in the database and see if they have affected your Mautic. So there's a whole lot of possibilities just with this one database module alone. But Codeception is based on PHP, so it can do everything PHP can. You can use conditions, loops, you can run curl, you can run shell commands. So in your Codeception tests, you can trigger campaigns and update segments and so forth. So if you are willing to learn a bit of PHP, the sky's the limit. You can do pretty much everything with Codeception because PHP can pretty much do anything as a programming language. So after that, I hope you're all really excited to try out Codeception yourselves. If you have any questions, please ask them now, or also get in touch with me on the Mautic Slack or via email. And yeah, I hope you have some questions for me.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for your session, and I hope many of our audience enjoyed the session as I enjoyed. It's great to see how it seems easy when you are guiding. Definitely, I'm not sure if it's that easy when I try to do by myself, but definitely the way how you structure the presentation seems it's easy to create a test unit, a unit test. So great. We have one question here. I'm not sure if you already responded because Valerie asked, "Am I right that it looks like Selenium WebDrive?"
Yeah, exactly. That's the interface between Codeception and Selenium. There are also a lot of different things that can like control a browser in Selenium. But Codeception, the thing about Codeception is that it's really easy to write the code. Like I said, you can basically read it out loud and it makes sense. It's not a lot of brackets and functions and this and that. So Codeception is just an easier way to interact with Selenium via WebDriver.
Nice, nice, great, great. And also, I have a question here. Maybe not. It's not that technical, but it's how can we use Codeception testing in our workflows?
Yeah, exactly. So one thing you can do with Codeception is at, for example, the end of a workday, you could just set up your Codeception tests, your acceptance tests to run once you've pushed all of your things to your Git, for example. Because like I said, even Codeception takes a bit of time to execute the tests, but you could just like have automatic testing at the end of each day or at the end of each week, whatever you want, and just see that what you've been actively working on still works. You could also periodically run Codeception tests against a Mautic that's supposed to be working, because sometimes things break for seemingly no reason. And you
Yes.
can just write a bunch of standard tests like create a contact, a segment, send an email, and so forth, and run them every week. And maybe you catch something going wrong. And if you don't, then you know that your Mautic instance, even if you haven't touched it, does what it's supposed to do.
Great, great. We have another question from Valerie. Let me highlight here. It's so mostly it's unit acceptance 101 lecture, and we feel free to use any language for testing, PHP or Python testing frameworks. It doesn't matter as we still use Selenium layer.
Yeah, so I think what the question is trying to get to is that, like I said, a lot of things can interact with Selenium. You can also use Python, for example. It has its advantages and disadvantages. Writing tests with like a Python WebDriver module, I think it's called, is a lot more complicated, I think. You can't
Hmm.
really read what you're doing out like you can with Codeception, but Codeception always has this other layer above it of like readability and being easy to understand, which
Yeah,
comes at the cost of having to use some predefined things. Sometimes if you want to do a really special thing that Codeception doesn't quite cover, it can be really hard to get it to do what you want. So if you are a really techy person and can easily write testing in Python, then go ahead.
amazing, amazing. Yeah, it's amazing to see how we can automate a marketing automation tool. So we are automating the tests to check if it's an marketing automation tool. It's working. Maybe we are kind of addicted to all kind of automation here. So amazing. So yeah, thank you, Patrick. And let me see if we have. Oh, we have another question here from Madeline. Um, can you tell us a bit about example cases where you were using Codeception?
Yeah, sure. So there are essentially two big cases I've been working on. One of them is testing a Mautic instance after there have been changes. So I have actually written a bunch of tests for like I said, creating a contact, a segment, sending a mail, and so on. Like just things that Mautic is supposed to be able to do. And after each change on the system, you can run all of them. It takes like 10 minutes, maybe. Like I said, you don't need to watch it for the whole time. And when you know that everything is still working like it should. The other thing is, since Codeception just opens a website, you can test also some other integrations. For example, I've been testing the integration between a shop platform and Mautic, so that if I create a customer profile in the shop, which has nothing to do with Mautic on its own, all of that data is supposed to be sent to Mautic via a plugin, and I can write tests that interact with both the shop and the Mautic at the same time to see that all of the integration is working like it should.
Amazing. Great. Yeah, I think integration is always uh, something we have to check over and over again if all the data is going, right. Uh, we have another question now from Ruth. Can you also check if, for example, an email was sent or an SMS was sent as would be expected, for example, for a campaign?
That's a really good question and something I've been actually struggling with for a bit. You can check the Mautic database, which is like the first thing you can see if an email is showing up in the email stats table. That's something, but it doesn't tell you that it's actually been received, for example. You can, in theory, make Codeception open your Gmail, log into Gmail,
Yes.
and see if an email is there. That's not the most secure way to do it, probably. There are also some ways to like integrate a mail catcher, of course, and interact with that. Like I said, if you can do it in a browser, you can do, or in a database, you can do it with Codeception. It just might be a bit more complicated than you would like it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, because basically you have to have somehow maybe a place where you could check some kind of a pop or any email or any way how to receive all your message and run through all messages and looking for the word that you are looking for. Yeah, but it's interesting. Amazing. So, well, you are getting so many hearts, Patrick, for your
Thank you.
presentation. So, and also Ruth mentioned about possibly Codeception will be part of our Mautic project. So it's interesting to see all how Mautic is worried about all this foundation, because when we talk about unit tests, it takes time, and usually it has a perception that you are not working, because you are creating tests. So, but that's important to scale your operation with Mautic to be able to run more campaigns, run more Mautics, or you can sleep in peace as soon as you have Codeception, helping you. Amazing, amazing. Thank you, everyone. We will have a next section with Acquia in a couple of minutes. So we'll be talking about how to scale your operation and your segmentation, and I hope to see all of you in our next session. Thank you, Patrick, again. Thank you, everyone. See you
Bye.
soon.